The narcissist's survival mode. The narcissist is in survival mode much of the time. This is because when a narcissist is having some form of interaction with another human being, there is the potential for there to be a threat to the narcissist's control. How might this manifest? Well, the most obvious one, of course, is being present with another person, being sat in a room with them, and that person is engaged in another task and isn't interacting with the narcissist. This is now wounding the narcissist. It's a double whammy, the worst possible thing that can happen to a narcissist, because not only is that person not providing validation to the narcissist by recognizing that they are there, they're also failing to provide the narcissist with fuel, that life-affirming juice that we require. The narcissist's sense of self-worth, of course, is tied to external validation and approval from others, which links into the notion of the necessity of control and the provision of fuel. Accordingly, a narcissist is repeatedly seeking out situations and interactions that will provide that validation, that will provide the individual with that feeling of power as a consequence of the receipt of fuel. The admiration, which of course is a form of fuel, and of course the giving of control. Although the narcissist doesn't recognize this, the sense of self-worth is in effect fragile, because any perceived threat to the notion of control results in a strong response, and invariably it is a strong emotional response that comes from the narcissist as a consequence of the ignition of fury. That fury manifests as heated or cold and drives emotions such as envy, jealousy, hatred, antipathy. In other instances where fury is not ignited, the narcissism will invoke strong emotional sensations of infatuation, which is misunderstood as being love. Because remember, the narcissist can't do anything in a lukewarm way. That's not good enough. It's all in. It's either do or don't. Because we don't want half control, we want total control. Although, of course, most of my kind don't realise that's what is being sought. A little bit of control is no use to anybody. We have to have that total hegemonic control of you. And thus, to ensure that the narcissist goes about that and achieves that, there has to be that strong emotional response caused by the narcissism. This often presents in a defensive, hostile manner in order to protect that need for control and to maintain our sense of superiority. Any sense of insecurity or vulnerability triggers this survival mode. Each and every moment, the narcissism is scanning all around the narcissist to determine, are they under control? Is he under control? Is she under control? Are they under control? The narcissist isn't actively thinking in such terms, but that's what's going on underneath the surface. It's like a background app. The way that he looked at the narcissist, that shows he's under control, no problem there. She's not talking to the narcissist. Threat to control, let's do something about it. Those people over there, they're whispering amongst themselves. They're whispering about the narcissist. They're not under control. We need to bring them under control. All of those factors result in the narcissist being in a repeated sense of survival mode. The necessity of protecting the narcissist by creating that state of vigilance and monitoring of what's going on around, and then the corrective response. It manifests, of course, as a near constant need when others are around for attention, praise, and validation. When the narcissism senses that that sense of control is being threatened, that survival mode kicks in and causes the narcissist to engage in the manipulations in order to regain that sense of control, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, and sometimes in a position of withdrawal. This survival mode is emphasized as well as a consequence of our lack of emotional empathy for others. We're focused on our own needs and desires. We aren't able to empathise with the experiences and emotions of other people. We're simply not interested. And therefore, that can often lead to alienation for the narcissist, which again is a threat to control. In some instances, the fact that the narcissist simply doesn't seem to understand other people, doesn't assist those other people, may cause them to move away from the narcissist, which thus in turn creates a threat to control. The narcissist, of course, will always be able to deal with that threat. The three assertions of control exist to always ensure that the narcissist can achieve that. But the narcissist is in this near constant survival mode. It's particularly worse for the lower echelon narcissists, because their ability to create situations that threaten their sense of control is such that they will get control, but the collateral consequence will arise, which will threaten their control, which they then have to deal with, which then may create another collateral consequence, whereby they're essentially kicking the can down the road. More evolved narcissists are more effective. That even whilst there's a threat to control on a repeated basis, they can deal with it quicker and show less signs of anxiety, or show none whatsoever. But the survival mode is the same for any kind of narcissist. Because save when there is no form of interaction with another human being, and remember we need those for the purposes of the provision of fuel, it's only when there is no involvement whatsoever that there can be no threat to control. Even when we're on our own, a threat to control can occur because we could receive a message from somebody that challenges us in some way, questions us, seeks to pin us with accountability. Or it might be the case that we happen to just think about somebody and we're wondering what they're doing. And therefore, because we've not heard from them in a while, that generates a sense of a threat to control. So even when we're away from people, that threat to control can still manifest. Thus, the survival mode is there. When we're with people, the scanning goes on. When we're away from people, there can still be the threats to control that can occur. The narcissism, of course, has evolved to deal with that initial threat to control that rose from the lack of control environment, and it does so most effectively. It guides us in the effective harvesting of our fuel. But it is, in effect, a survival mode. The narcissist doesn't necessarily feel like that. It's not like the narcissist will feel out of control. It's not like the narcissist feels that they're on the brink of collapse, although sometimes, where there's a fuel crisis, of course, they can be in that position. But most of the time, the narcissist will feel edified by the supply of fuel, feel powerful, feel like a colossus. But they're in effect still in survival mode, because in the next moment another threat to control can come along, and therefore the narcissism steps in to protect the narcissist, and thus the survival mode continues. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.